Hello YouTube, this is Wakia Lion, come to you pre-record from his camper. Going from the last video, part 3 of 1, this video will talk about the next 4 houses that start from the ages 12 through 27. This being the ego-based houses that will further flesh out the concepts that will guide, in Chaldeanism's eyes, the puberty years of a child becoming an adult. Next 12 to 18 years are much more different than the first 12, being based on the idea that the child is now becoming an adult. The training wheels are removed during this time, now being the time to test all that the children have learned and developed from the first 4 houses. This isn't going to be a blatant sink or swim situation. The first 4 years after the 12 will be spent in preparation for the coming of age journey that will take place at age 16. But these next 4 years will be a matter of self-propulsion with advisement rather than complete control from the parents. It's the weaning period, in other words. I will discuss the next 4 houses in the sense of what they are supposed to represent in a person's journey and what they will attempt to do during the 4-year period. I will discuss how I will go about this later on in the video according to the real world we live in. Until then, let's begin. The 5th house, known as the house of children, good fortune, romance, creativity, etc., is primarily focused on developing one's sense of self above everything else. The Sun and Leo are associated with this house in modern astrology, so there comes with it an air of wanting to develop one's self-image, just as it is in real life. This is the period where the child should start to explore the outer world beyond his or her parents, and to develop their self-confidence. Above all else, this is supposed to be a time period where the child starts to become separate from the parents, venturing forth on their own, and forced, if not willingly, to do so. This is a much less direct form of teaching, and is more about developing the solar pathos within the child, a necessary first step in order to succeed in the journey. This would probably be best explained by the simple concept of don't know what to do, figure it out. Anything that the child chooses to do, let them do it. But understand that they now have the responsibility of taking care of their own business, attaining their own desires, and building their own life. This is just as much a learning period for the parents as it is for the child, especially those with strong lunar principles. The moon does not want to let go of the child, symbolizing the mother. But this is the period where the weaning process must begin for both mother and father for the sake of the child. This, of course, will happen over the 4-year span, but is arguably the most important part of the weaning process. The 6th house is the house of service and physical well-being. Associated with Mercury and Virgo, the 6th is focused on the practical management of one's life, the everyday necessities and administrative minutiae. This house is focused on the broader concept of resource management, i.e. investments. It's not just about survival anymore like it is for the 2nd. Now it's about looking beyond mere survival. The idea is simple. What things can you do that are of value to others that you can use to better establish yourself within an ecosystem? This isn't necessarily focused on a career in the way we think of it, a career being a specialization. Rather, it's focused on your utility as a person and your adaptability to be whatever is of value to someone else and yourself at a given time. This is also, as stated earlier, where your responsibilities should start expanding to where you have to start keeping track of your own finances, maintenance, and well-being. Unlike the 1st house, which focused on the predatory instinct, the 6th is more about health. What exercises best serve me? What diet best serves me? What little things can I do in my life that could improve my overall well-being in a physical or financial sense? And is it worth the effort? This is where I suspect that the kids would want to start making more money than is available just through chores, and that's good. It's a big part in developing independence. The seventh house, the house of relationships of all kinds, goes against the previous six houses and at the same time combines all of them into a singular skill set. See, up to this point, it's been very self-focused, not so much other-focused. But this house will take what has been developed in the other six houses and develop it into something that is more other-oriented. This is the courting house, the type of schooling that takes one's knowledge and interests and learn to use it to interact with people who are of like enough character to hopefully build proper friendships and possibly partnerships. It's also focused on learning who is not your friend and developing a keen sense of those you need to stay away from. Business relationships, sexual relationships, political relationships, i.e., scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. This house is very much about learning how to adapt and develop oneself within a social context and understanding what is socially inappropriate and socially appropriate. It's learning how to hone one's ego and make it more understandable to others. This is also where learning how to court the opposite sex is a very big deal in particular. After all, this is where puberty starts to hit, and learning how to be in harmony with your genitals is a very, very important part of Chaldeanism. To give this a solid physical context, this is where Venetian qualities come into play, such as how to dress for the occasion, how to speak for the occasion, how to not place yourself in situations that you are not appropriate for or comfortable with, or to learn how to adapt to those uncomfortable environments. I, for example, am not a big fan of loud places, and I will, as politely as I can put it, tell people that I do not want to go to the loud place. On the opposite side, I have forced myself to do things that I don't normally feel comfortable doing, like nude modeling, to help me expand my social sphere. The main skill set, in other words, that the seventh teaches is learning the art of saying yes and no, and knowing what to say yes and no to. Despite what the popular consensus may be, the seventh really is about learning your prey boundaries and how not to be taken advantage of, and to learn how to take advantage of opportunity, ideally in a graceful manner. Finally, the eighth house is the house of debt, dying, sex, and secrets. This is the house where a refocus on the predatory instinct is revisited, but with a twist. This is a house that is, as far as I'm concerned, focused on vengeance. An eye for an eye is the saying that I would use to best explain how this house works. And it is an appropriate thought process, despite what some may think. What do you do when someone doesn't respect your boundaries? What do you do when you serve someone and they don't repay in kind? What do you do when someone is constantly trying to tear you down? What would you do for a Klondike bar? Vengeance is a collection of debts owed, nothing more, nothing less. It's just as much about learning how to discern the worthy from the unworthy, much like the seventh house does, as it is about getting back what one is owed or forgiving what has been lost. This is also where it would be good to have a serious conversation with the kids when it comes to inheritance. Many would think this is too early of an age to have this conversation, but I would say that this would be the perfect time. Why? Because the kids need to know that nothing is owed to them beyond what they are willing to give in return. That an inheritance is something earned, not given, and that they need to see their lives as such. Whether the inheritance comes from mom or dad or dividends in the stock, it's all dependent on one's ability to be self-reliant and to be able to endure the pain of loss and flip it around to make something grow from it. You only get what you're willing to give. But when and to who is the real question of the equation. The eighth deals with this. This is also where the concept of sex comes in, being the most sacred of acts a person can perform with another. Is something that must be given and taken in equal measure, lest it leaves incurable scars in a person's psyche and spirit. This is the house that deals with the serious aspects of relationships, unlike the fifth, which is more playful and bombastic. So teach your kids just how serious relationships of any kind can really be. Houses 5 through 8 are difficult to explain and be direct with. The reason being is that these houses are where Chaldeanism's concept of education starts to really show itself. It's not the controlled environment that traditional schools teach. It's very much based on the school of life. And just as the name states, the only teacher that teaches life is life itself. All you are, as the parent, is simply the student that came before your kids. This process is a lot to develop within someone in the time span of 4 years, and thankfully, it's not just 4 years. The 4 years, as stated earlier, is both the weeding process and the finishing of the foundation that was laid out in the first 4 houses. By the time 16 has come, the kids should be practically tugging at their leashes, ready to go on their journey and get away from the house. In the ideal scenario, the journey is a coming of age expedition throughout the society and the development of their characters outside of mom and dad's safety. The society being designed to accommodate for this. In other words, in reality, the journey I think would be something to discuss with your spouse and kids. Definitely something where the kids go off on their own for a bit though. Here in Arizona, as an example, I would love to walk the Arizona Trail from start to finish, stopping into towns along the way to wash up, eat, resupply, etc., much like they did in the Old West. I would like my kids to do the same. I would like them to also get their GED early so they don't have to deal with public school any more than they have to. If I homeschool them, definitely would have them go to public school for their 4 years so they can get a clue of how the outer world is. My primary goal, above all else, is to get them independent and ready for actual life instead of make-believe life that so many people end up sheltering their kids in, especially people who have a crazy worldview, such as mine. Past the age of 16, it's really just more of the journey that began at 16. But now they are officially their own individuals separate from family. The next 11 to 14 years is just exploring what the world has to offer and establishing oneself in their own niche. It's a good time to explore professions, date, travel, etc., much like what is done in real life, but in a way just as it was intended to be. For the youth to grow into their own world and prepare for the next stage of their lives and, by proxy, society's life. In other words, the journey with purpose, not just insignificance like what usually happens in real life. So, thank you, dear listener. If you liked the video of my writing, I suggest checking out my library on Facebook through Google Cloud. My book, Warren, is a set of stories placed in the world of Warren and heavily influenced by many different ideas and beliefs that I hold in both high regard and close to my heart. Again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to lecturing you again in the next video. Bye.